The Philadelphia Eagles are coming off one of the best seasons in NFL history, and not only did they stop a three-peat, but they put on a dominant display in front of the entire world without their highest paid defensive player on the field. And today, we react to some quotes from that player who essentially admits that he quit on the team early in the season. We'll talk about that and what he said about the dynamic with Vic Fangio's defense, all that and more coming up. Welcome into A to Z Philly. I'm RB, and I want to start this off by saying I have nothing personal against Bryce Huff. Today, we are only going off what he said in this interview and what he had to say about really the way things played out in Philadelphia. So, look, nothing against Bryce Huff, but I do not appreciate what he said about the Eagles, because simply thinking about this, right? Bryce Huff went from undrafted to getting the highest contract ever for a non-quarterback undrafted player, right? He's done some great things in his career, and I'm sure he's made his family very proud, but the mentality that he is displaying is very quitter-ish. It's very Wentz-ish in a way. And I'm kind of shocked. You know, this was not on the agenda today, but once I heard these quotes, I knew I had to hop on here and talk about it. So we'll get into it all. The Eagles put on one of the best seasons I've ever seen. Like, just not only as an Eagles fan, as a football fan, the sheer dominance week to week was incredible. So I think his comments are off base here. But let's talk about what Bryce Huff had to say. Shout out to the TheSFNiners YouTube page. They had an interview with Bryce Huff. Obviously, he was traded to the San Francisco 49ers, and I'm sure he's probably doing better now health-wise, mentality-wise. Earlier in the offseason, he put out that cryptic Instagram post where he essentially, was saying goodbye without saying goodbye. And I think that's another thing that kind of bothers me too. You didn't have to like the way things played out here in Philly, but you could at least appreciate the fact that they made you the highest paid undrafted non-quarterback player ever. You could at least appreciate the dominance that this team had in winning a Super Bowl. But let's hear the first quote from Bryce Huff.
Across, I know San Francisco. Like, what's kind of like the behind the scenes feel that goes into a trade?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if I'm being 100% honest with you, I wanted to trade like fairly early on, and just because of how things went in Philly, like I knew pretty early on that it wasn't a fit. But, like, being a signing of that magnitude, like being undrafted and going and getting that contract and being in Philly, like, the expectations are at an all-time high. So
I want to stop it right there. First off, he says, I wanted to trade very early on. Was that week 5 when the Eagles were trying to rebound? They were 2-2. Was that after that? Right? We started to hear rumblings about how, Bryce Huff's snap count was going down and he wasn't really a Fangio guy. And look, I get it. You're not everybody's cup of tea. Vic Fangio is old-fashioned. He's a very, like, A and B type of coach, like business in order. I don't care who you are, where you come from, how much you're making. The best players are going to be on the field, and that's something I really appreciate about Vic Fangio. But one of the concerns about Bryce coming into the Eagles was, he's a pass rush specialist. He had a breakout season. If we look at his stats, right? He had the 10 sacks with the Jets. He barely played half the snaps, and they thought they could unlock more. And sure, maybe he wasn't a fit in the Fangio scheme, which we all kind of alluded to when he was signed, but he says that he wanted to trade very early on. Does that mean you weren't even willing to try to improve or get better? And then he says, signing here, the magnitude, the expectations were high. Well, did you not expect that? Were you not willing to live up to that in Philly?
I knew a trade wasn't going to happen during the season, but I had just kind of like talked to my agent about it. I was like, yeah, when it's all said and done, like I might need to step, just to be able to put myself in the best position to ball out and have a fruitful career.
So this guy early on looked at Vic Fangio's defense and said, yep, I'm not a fit. Even though you probably had conversations with what your role was going to look like when you signed here. Or maybe Bryce Huff just saw all those zeros on the paper and he said, you know what, I don't care. Just pay me and we'll do what we have to do.
And there's a plethora of things that went down. I don't want to get into specifics, but
of course,
I like being in the league for five years last year. I'm going into my 6th right now, but being in the league for 5 years, I kind of knew what it felt like for me to be, to be in a good situation, and that's just what I was like, yeah, I gotta look out for myself. And
There it is right there. I got to look out for myself. He wasn't worried about the team winning. He wasn't worried about the success, the fact that they're breaking all these franchise records and they're going on wins. He seems like he was just out mentally and he quit and he said, you know what? I just want to be in the best spot for me. I want to make my money and do my thing, and I'm not really worried about the team success. And that's not the type of player that will thrive in a Vic Fangio system. I want to listen to another quote that he had to say here, because I think it's very telling, again, of his mindset. And again, I have nothing against him personally, but when you make these types of quotes, I'm just so glad that Howie Roseman traded this guy away and even got value back. I didn't even think that would be the case based on his contract, but the Eagles dodged a huge bullet. Let's take a listen to this one.
Question. I think we can end it on this one so I can get you out of here. What's your biggest motivation this year?
Honestly, playing somewhere where I was highly paid and I thought that was going to bring me fulfillment, and
being somewhere where I was highly paid, I thought that would bring me fulfillment, aka cha-ching. He wanted the dollars. He didn't care about winning.
And ended up not being fulfilled in that environment kind of highlighted what made football special for me. And I was playing with a group of guys that, not the guys on the team, but I think like the coaches, so that I genuinely felt like wanted to see me succeed in this league.
You know what this reminds me of? It's very Miami Dolphins-esque. You know, the Dolphins, all those young, immature players blamed Vic Fangio. Essentially here, he's taking a shot at Vic Fangio, saying he didn't want to see me succeed. He didn't want to put me in the best situation. It's always him, never me, never my fault. Well, guess what? Vic Fangio left the Dolphins. They stunk. He comes here and puts on one of the best displays by a defensive coordinator ever. Bryce Huff probably went into the season thinking he was going to be the man, had a rough start, and guess what? He quit. It's Vic Fangio's fault. He doesn't want to see me be better, and, you know, it's just not the right situation for me.
And exceed everybody's expectations, and that's what gave me a lot of value and want to kind of ball out. Like, that kind of put me over the edge. And then also, like, being able to grow with the group of guys on the D line, like that's what means everything to me. And I'm not saying I didn't vibe with the guys in Philly, because I 100% did, but like I know what this scheme brings out of people. Like in Philly, like it was like interior was in one room, outside was in another, and it kind of put a little divide.
Put a little divide? You have to be kidding me, Bryce. Bryce, come on, man. A divide? This Eagles team, not only were they dominant on the field, they were some of the closest players, the close-knit group that I've ever seen in my life. I mean, everybody knew where everybody needed to be. They knew when one piece moved on the chessboard, the other one moved this way. Like, they were so in sync. It was unbelievable. So he's mad that the interior defensive line were in one room and the edge rushers were in another room? Come on. You know what this really states, man? He was the odd man out because he doesn't have that hungry mentality. And when I think about this as a whole, it kind of goes to speak about the strategy that Howie's using with team building, because we always talk about the fact that it's a financial decision, right? The Eagles are building with young players because they want to win on rookie contracts. But what we don't talk about is that when those guys are on rookie contracts, they're fighting 10 times harder because they want to earn that money. They want to earn that contract. And there is kind of this widespread theme in sports nowadays where once guys get that big paycheck, some of them take their foot off the gas pedal because they made everything for their families, right? They made it for the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Their families can relax. They have the money now. And they kind of lose that motivation because not every player is super focused on winning. So that's another thing in terms of not only being younger and athletic and less injury prone, but when you have guys who are fighting on rookie contracts and that's how you're building your team now, they're also 10 times hungrier because they want to go make that money. And it just sounds like a guy in Bryce Huff's type of situation is just like, yeah, well, you know, I didn't fit and Vic Fangio didn't really want to see me get better and I made my money and the expectations were too high. And honestly, it's just giving off a weak mentality, man. That's just my take on it.
In there. So I'm back in the group with like my entire D line. Like we got the interior and outside. we got the coaches all on one accord. Like, I know what's about to go down. So my biggest motivation is just like being back with the group of people that got me playing at the highest level and being able to like put on for those guys,
being back with the group that has me playing at the highest level. Well, I think we know where your motivations are. And at the end of the day, I think what really just ticks me off is that Bryce Huff wasn't even excited about the Super Bowl. I understand it's a hard hit to your ego, but not even like posting anything about the Super Bowl or at least thanking Philadelphia when you left. You could have at least thanked the coaches and Howie Roseman for giving you that money and the fans for being passionate, but nah. You know, he exited. He's ready to be in San Francisco. He acts like this year never happened, and it's unfortunate. Give me your thoughts down below. How do you feel about Bryce Huff? What do you make of these comments? Do you agree with them at all? Let me know your thoughts. Appreciate everybody for tapping in. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, I will catch you on the next one.